next speaker will be Geert Lovink, and he is a theorist from how do you call it, University of Applied Sciences in Amsterdam. He has written quite a few interesting articles and books, and very inspired by the social Alice, and in particular the Alice. I give you the floor and hope you will say more on that. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Geert Lovink. I'm from the Institute of Network Cultures in Amsterdam, the Amsterdam University of Applied Science, Hogeschool Amsterdam. This is a small research unit that I'm running there since 2004. And today in my presentation I will tell you a little bit about how I have been trying to theorize the idea of criticism in the context of the internet. And yeah, I'm very pleased with this whole emphasis on the hermeneutics. I have a very positive feeling towards the concept of hermeneutics. So definitely, if I would press, I would certainly say yes, I practice digital hermeneutics. So this is my daily job and my passion already for a long time. I love the idea that we can lay out the code, we can lay out the interfaces, concepts, interactions. Of course, this is today primarily done through mapping. So the idea of laying out in the old sense, in the biblical sense of hermeneutics, is these days done with technical tools through mapping. I myself don't emphasize any at all on data or on quantitative analysis, because I have too many colleagues who are forced to do that anyway. So I take a minority position of critical theory and conceptual development of tools, networks and communities in this field to foster critical debates and also prototypes. After all, I'm in an applied science school, so it really comes up also to actual making, not only theorizing. Okay, so this is the website. There are a number of projects and communities that we developed over the years. This is an oldest one and probably most successful one, Video Vortex, that looks at the aesthetics of online video and asks the simple question: what is the difference between online video and the language of cinema and television? Quite a simple question, but with one with huge implications. Obviously, the database is playing a very important role there. A project that I personally like a lot, in which this kind of interpretation, critique, really comes together, is this one together with our colleagues in Bangalore. Focusing on a critical analysis of Wikipedia. Of course, the Wikipedians didn't like this project. If you do this work, the work will not be honored and celebrated, right? If you take a critical stand, you will pay the price for it, right? This needs to be very clear. And in the case of Wikipedia, this became very, very obvious. The Wikipedia community is obviously stagnating, everybody knows that. The cultural critique of Wikipedia has been voiced from the side of gender, but also post-colonial aspects and so on. Time and again, Wikipedia is not changing. The whole internal culture of the West Western male geek engineering perspective is still, even after 10 years of this critique, right, is not changing. And as a result, the Wikipedia project itself, the biggest non-profit project on the internet that we have, right, is severely stagnating and is in real danger. Yeah. So I'm just saying that yeah, you can be a critic and so on, but sometimes you know, we're also dealing with very real issues. Another one that I like as well is this one, almost impossible, like many of our projects, to find money for, but this is a small critical community that deals with search engine, knowledge production, Society of the Query, obviously a reference to the Boers Society of the Spectacle, and kind of gives a good idea of how we move 50 years later from an image analysis to, let's say, a database analysis. So this is something, you know, that we could work on if we got money tomorrow, or I could even start today. But yeah, so this is really difficult. Why? Because search is moving in the background. Search is becoming part of the infrastructure. It's becoming part of what I call the techno-unconscious. And this is, of course, to the benefit of Google, Baidu, and others. But it is also something, you know, that means that we are no longer really able to question the architectures and the cultures of use. Why? Because it's been ingrained. It's been, you know, it's now so deep inside us we don't even notice anymore. When we do a search, it goes that fast. We go there, look up something, and go further, right? Another really annoying topic, of course, in the Netherlands is our critique of the creative industries. It's definitely not something you make yourself popular with. So this is deals with the precarity of a lot of our students. We have thousands of students in our school. And they're all kind of, you know, educated to become precarious workers. And so these projects started already early, because I was massively confronted with this ideology when I was still living in Australia. So the whole idea of the cultural industry has been around, in fact, already for a good 20 years. But after the global financial crisis and the period of austerity, it definitely arrived in the Netherlands, and it is now the prevailing ideology. All students are raised to become entrepreneurs, and this is a very, very important issue also in, let's say, the way we look at the internet and the role the internet is playing in this. Another new one, that this is nice, although we haven't really been able to find a lot of money for it, but this network is now really taking shape. It's about the politics of the online self. Obviously, it deals with the selfie, but there's so many manifestations now and ways to politicize the self, the online self. Think also of the implications after Snowden, the rise of what we call mask design. This is also a nice term in which a lot of people look for different ways to continue to play with the identity, despite of the fact that Silicon Valley, together with, of course, NSA and many other secret services and governments, are absolutely cracking down on anonymity and pseudonymity, right? These are kind of naive notions today from a time, kind of a utopian time in the 90s. The reality on the internet is, of course, very, very harsh, and it is no longer a play. So how can we, in this time of what is called the Great Regression, how can we still, let's say, take up and conquer temporary autonomous zones in which especially young people can play, can get to know different identities. And I can tell you, the internet startups, they will not be beneficial in that game. So because it is absolutely undermining all, let's say, terrorism policies that we know. So this is a fact. And yeah, so this is one of our communities that recently, of course, woke up again. It's called Unlike Us, and it deals with the critique of social media in relation to the question, are there alternative architectures to the prevailing platforms, to the social media platforms as we know them? Is there an alternative? And can we think of an alternative? For instance, Facebook groups. I want to relate now to the last speaker. For instance, it is known that Facebook groups is from the software perspective, it's a complete and utter disaster. Yeah, it is not complex. It is stupid. It is poor. Yeah, if you compare Facebook groups with any other kind of discussions forum software, any other type where people can discuss, yeah, it's a complete and utter disaster. And what we just looked at this presentation of Jan is the result of that interfacial disaster that Facebook is unwilling to change. And now, of course, after the Cambridge Analytica, suddenly Mark Zuckerberg comes, yeah, we want to do something with community, right? And of course, a lot of people immediately think about the interfacial disaster of Facebook groups. And what are they going to do about this? Because you cannot have a normal discussion on Facebook groups, right? This is because they prevent that from happening. Jan already mentioned it. The prevailing logic there is the logic of updating. Yeah? But updating plays no role whatsoever, in a conversation or let alone in a public debate. Yeah? How should software look like if we want to have a serious public debate? We know, maybe you all have made this experience, that it's almost impossible to have a public debate on a platform like Twitter. They were not designed for that. And the design mistakes that were made there are absolutely beyond repair. Yeah, if you want to turn Twitter, let's say, into a discussion platform, you have to start from scratch. I'm very sorry. If you want to, I'm just giving you an example now of how, let's say, the critique and analysis, because I really loved Jan's case study, and these case studies are absolutely important to zoom into the detail. And this is what I would call, digital hermeneutics. Digital hermeneutics means going into the detail. And then coming up with a materialist analysis of how the software restraints completely cripple people's possibility to express themselves. Okay? Okay. Now I want to say something more about the history, let's say, of another term that I myself have been identified with, and I'm personally very much involved in. And that's internet criticism. So from the beginning, let's say in 93, 94, I was convinced that if we wanted to build up this medium, not only should we have, let's say, access for all, which was a group that I was part of, which is now the internet provider, or have public debates. In imagining how people in different communities and debates could come together, which was a project called the Digital City, the Digitale Stad. But immediately after, it was clear to me that we should introduce a level of reflection. And the result of that is this NetTime mailing list, which funny enough still exists. So I started it in '95 with Piet Schultz, and several of these mailing lists still exist. The main one, of course, the one in English, with 7,000 or 8,000 people on it, is still very active and relevant, much to my surprise. I have to say, I stopped being involved in it around 2000 when I moved to Australia. But it is still an example for me of a place where people come together in order to discuss the critical concepts, to introduce them to each other, and to examine them, and to develop a vocabulary in order to understand what is going on. Because the industry, the IT industry, the startups, the venture capitalists have no interest whatsoever in reflection, right? This is actively undermined inside universities, inside the industry itself. The industry is ruthlessly focused on PR and marketing. And that's why the biggest school, my school in Amsterdam, which has 5,000 students, is now fully focused, has transformed itself over the past couple of years into social media marketing. And of course, if you study social media marketing, the last thing you want to do is reflect. This is absolutely forbidden. This is forbidden. And so these ideas, and we see that maybe you have noticed the delete Facebook campaign, Arjen Lubach, and all the rest, right? The whole social media marketing community was quite scared. They were not prepared for this. It's the one in the Netherlands I'm talking about now, also in the internationally, but okay, so what happened late March was quite significant, but it took them about a week to reconfigure and to hit back. And so since early April they have been ruthlessly trying to bring back the whole community, all the people, journalists, etc., into the PR spin again, right? So the idea that we can question the very fundamental concepts on which those social media are based should be off the agenda, right? And I would say they have more or less succeeded, although at the moment, it's still, we'll see how it goes, right? But of course, the things that happened in March, April, it's been the very first really questioning on a global scale of the social media paradigms, which in itself is remarkable, but also remarkably slow. I'm very sorry. I'm into this game for 25 years, and I still have the feeling like, oh, we started yesterday, right? Facebook critique of the basic concepts has yet to be formulated. There's very few critics. Of course, I have some colleagues and some really famous one like Morozov and Shirley Turkle and Jan Lanier and remarkably almost no Europeans, right? In the whole field of internet critique there are no Europeans. So that is in itself, should really be a wake-up call. Okay, so here I show you some of the early things that I found somewhere. So this is a book, stuff in the 90s. I was mainly publishing in German, not in English. So these are the early writings from that very turbulent period, and what we've done in the Institute of Network Cultures is that we, on the one hand, try to apply these things to fields. I've already mentioned different very concrete platforms and where you can do these interventions. But the precarity level, the approach, which is focusing more on the future of the professions, that is also very interesting for us. And as a result of that, we started together with Sonja van der Valk and Domein voor de Kunstkritiek a while ago. We started to work on the future of art criticism in the Netherlands and in Flanders. First of all, because we focused on the future of art criticism in the Dutch language. Out of that, after we've done experiments like this for a number of years, this new network emerged. So we've only announced it in November. We're building it up now. It will be it is a European network. It's probably also our first European network because, I don't know why, but okay, we will focus on Europe with this. And the idea here is, here it tries to explain. There's a lot you can find on this website, which is part of the art of criticism. And we built and launched a couple of weeks ago this toolkit. So this is the toolkit, and it's published on the Publishing Lab, which is our place where we do the hands-on experience, where we work with designers, coders, critics, academics together. And here you can see how we very practically try to help the next generation, the young art critics, to become more digitally literate. I know it's very simple, but they mostly study art history, and there's nothing in their study that prepares them for the upcoming unemployment, right? Because I'm sorry, this is tragic. And so we look, we have a few of the tools there that. With in the forms of workshops, etc., we try to introduce these new digital tools to art critics, because we believe that, and we all know that, the space for critique in the traditional media is shrinking. There's less and less space in daily newspapers, radio, television. All the statistics, you can read them. The evidence of this, especially over the long run, over the last, let's say, 20, 30 years, is dramatic. However, the art critics are still, educated as if they live in the 19th century. This is the gap there is growing, and so there we have really an urgent appeal, and I'm just listing here some of the topics. So we are, for instance, emphasizing a lot on long reads or long forms, the 5,000 word essays that are really popular on the internet. And it's good to know. But these are standalone essays, right? And they are lifted out of the boring and closed environment of the academic peer-reviewed journal, right? So this long read is out in the open. It's out, and it is standalone. Image mapping, video criticism, of course, making vlogs. Then Edit This Post, which is a great collaborative tool to write, collaborative art criticism. While you're watching a theater play, together with the audience, you can write a critique. So that's a great tool that we love. Debate online, of course, how to do that, how to structure it. Again, I spoke about the disaster of Facebook groups, but in fact, we have a wonderful a range of digital tools in which we can reorganize the online debate. Yeah, and here I can see that Miriam Rush recently wrote this review of this book, and it's a really good book. I can recommend you this, because here we try, you know, with this project to go to the next level. This book is really asking that question, you know, what is a digital critic? And this is, in our understanding, you know, the most relevant question today, because we can say, okay, the taste has been democratized, and that's it. We can have a fatalistic point of view and say, well, critique is no longer possible because everybody has an opinion, everybody can voice that opinion. Yeah, but yeah, we believe that we have a very different take on this. Yeah. Let me see. No, it's not going any further. It stops here. Apparently. So I don't know. I have a few more slides, but and, okay, that's it. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay, yeah, because I just wanted to show you two of my last books. This is the Networks Without a Cause, in which I have a chapter. It's called, well, two of them, they're related, kind of. That's the treatise on comment culture, because obviously critique and comment culture, they're absolutely related, right? So in the internet, you know, and of course nowadays comment culture is solely associated with the trolls, right? But this is, I think, it's unfair, and we need to take back that space. And so there are rich and diverse and really controversial, you know, comment spaces in which really people go very deep into a topic that is not dominated by trolling, right? And then, yeah, I have a specific chapter if you want to read more about, you know, how I look at internet criticism in relation to the wider debate on, let's say, where critique stands at the moment, and art criticism in particular, right? And then there's my latest book, this one, Social Media Abyss, which was just mentioned, in which I go through a few of the more current topics, such as the social media critique, and then our attempts to do critical work in the field of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and the blockchain called Money Lab. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Geert, for your inspiring talk. Maybe one question and then over coffee some others. First question, Anna.
Well, you mentioned a couple of times the disaster of Facebook groups.
Yeah.
And I was actually wondering what were your arguments for this claim. I wasn't entirely sure what you meant.
Okay.
So,
Well, have you used Facebook groups?
yes,
Okay.
I did. So
Okay.
I think I do not agree with you, but I would like to.
So, yeah, but let's have a conversation about it then. What are the features in Facebook groups that you like? Huh?
Well, I would first like to answer your question, and then I will defend myself.
Okay, and you don't want to answer the question?
Oh, I can, but
Okay.
I'm not really talking about affordances for that matter, so that's why I asked about.
Yeah. So the problem is, of course, one of, for instance, the whole question of threads, of authorship, which is important in a discussion. I don't know how much you know about let's say the evolution of these spaces that come from mailing list cultures in the 1980s and 90s. Then in the 90s, coming from, in fact, the bulletin board systems, developing on the World Wide Web, becoming kind of very large discussion forums. So this is what is called the forum software, and there's a few of them around, but usually they're very much focused or associated with geek culture. So there's a few of them left, but not very many. Then moving into the, let's say, Web 2.0 period of the blogs, in which all of a sudden the debate becomes profile-centric. Because in the past these debates were not profile-centric, and the whole through the introduction of social networking, the whole concept of the profile was introduced, and that idea of the profile has fundamentally changed the architectures of online discussion architectures, and you see that very much in, let's say, the heydays of blogging, which is around 2004 till 2008, in which you see that the blog, for instance, is a single author who invites or creates a community where you have a blog posting, and then others who are part of that community are more or less invited to write a comment below the posting, which was at that time already a complete setback, a really a severe form of regression in comparison to the much more democratic, egalitarian forms in which discussion forum software was dealing with the question of who speaks and who has the ownership, and what is a thread. Is there an owner of the thread? Yes or no? Coming to Facebook groups, then you see that the whole updating then becomes introduced. And where more or less egalitarian discussions between people is almost impossible because of the software architecture.
Well, can I explain?
Maybe you can explain that you are the one who is doing the Antwerp research. So.
Yes, and I was actually delivering the data for the paper we wrote with Jan on context collapse. So I'm a little bit interested in the parts of communication with regard to Facebook. And I do agree with the threats you mentioned, but I do think that the communication as such on Facebook actually works pretty well. So.
But I'm not talking about communication, of course. I'm talking about discussion and critical discourse making, which for me is, and also community building, which of course, which is very well known for commercial reasons. Facebook has actively suppressed all the time. They're closing, larger communities, and this is well known because first of all, they don't like controversy. Secondly, they can't make any money out of that. So this is why the activity of people is constantly pushed back, let's say, into the newsfeed and so on.
Thank you. Seems to me a discussion that you can take on during the coffee. Jan, maybe?
Well, also related to the same thing. I'm really interested in the sort of normative perspective you take when you talk about these social networks, right?
Yeah, strategic, tactical. Yeah, that's I'm normative. That's for sure. I'm critical.
And, well, so am I. But in the analysis, for me, I think, and also for Gosha and a number of others, the way people do the work they do in these very imperfect environments very strongly reminds me of what we've seen in movies, inmates communicating with a spoon against the heating system, right? I mean, it's a given that there is no form of communication that is perfect.
Yes, but there are simple forms, and there are forms that are designed to be surveyed and commodified, and there are others. And there are people who strongly believe that there's something like a public space that needs to be defended, and that a debate can only happen if it happens in a more or less public setting.
Yeah, but for me the issue is it still produces something.
Yeah, of course. I mean, beyond good and bad, I think the critical work that Facebook scholars do is absolutely, important, no doubt. But I want to emphasize here the strategic question. And I'm working with students, and I want to talk about their future, their prospects. And Facebook for me is not a prospect. I'm very sorry.
Thank you very much.